Broadcasting live from Lothal. Good morning, Lothal. It's the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Good Morning Lothal, the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I'm Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora.
How are we doing today, Rolly?
Dude, I'm pumped. Season 2 is amazing. I'm ready to do another great episode review of Rebels. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm sorry if I look a little tired. I had an issue pop up right before we recorded. My wife's tire blew out in the middle of downtown, so I had to go and save her. Me and my dad went and changed a tire right there with cars zooming past us. It was pretty cool. It was like like an Indy 500 pit or something like that. We were just kind of scrambling around trying to get it done, but nothing, as usual, is ever going to stop us from recording this show. So I'm having a good day, and I'm ready to talk some Star Wars. But before we get to anything related to Star Wars, let's do a little house cleaning, and we're going to talk about like, sharing, and subscribing. It's what we say every show. This show is no different. I'd like to please invite everyone, if you haven't already, share it with a friend, share it with a coworker, share it with a loved one. Let them know that if they're into Star Wars, this is the show for them, okay? So just want to put that out there. So, Rolly, what's happening around the galaxy?
Let's see what's happening this week in Star Wars.
All right, so we got some cool minor news this week. Nothing too major as far as the actual films or TV series or anything like that. I wanted to point out a couple of large Comic Cons where there were Star Wars celebrity appearances. Number one, C2E2. The con attendees may know this as the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo. Really, really large con. I've been fortunate to attend to it, and it is just like, it's insane the amount of draw that this place gets. So I wanted to point out some Star Wars guests since it was occurring this weekend. They had some big names out there. They got Billy D. Williams, who plays Lando. Mercedes Varnado, who most people know as Sasha Banks from wrestling, but also our Mandalorian. Moses Ingram from Obi-Wan Kenobi. Rosario Dawson. Yeah, she was there. I was really jealous because I'm kind of like in the state where I'm not going to cons getting my usual autographs during my career change. So yeah, there were some names this weekend where I was like, man, like I wish I could have had the opportunity to get out there. And she's one of them. I thought she was just such an amazing addition to the Star Wars universe. I love Reva, like we discussed in episodes prior. Rosario Dawson, who I have met, who plays Ahsoka in live action Star Wars. Rupert Friend, who plays the Grand Inquisitor in Obi-Wan Kenobi. This one's close to my heart. I wish I could have met him in person. Steve Blum, who plays Zeb in Star Wars Rebels. And last but certainly not least, who I also wish I could have met, Vivian Lyra Blair, who plays young Leia from Kenobi. I saw some of the photo ops and people were like leaning down to take a picture with her. I was like, man, like if you're going to get a picture or meet young Leia, you gotta meet her when she's actually truly young Leia. Like you want to meet her like 20 years down the road, and she's like, I think the photo op is just like perfect.
Totally different. I know, man, and I know I typically, you know, I don't really like children, but like there's something like to travel to take a picture with a 10-year-old because she was just so awesome in the show. I mean, you know, you got to be a real fan to do something like that.
Yeah, seriously. And I saw a bunch of people getting their Lola, her droid, getting cool. That signed. I thought that was like a super, super cool item to get signed.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So another big con that's actually close to us here in San Antonio, Texas, happened this weekend also. They had a few Star Wars guests, biggest name being Ewan McGregor, who plays none other than Obi-Wan Kenobi. Giancarlo Esposito from The Mandalorian,
dude,
who plays...
I would have loved to have met him. Like he, more so than Ewan, believe it or not. That guy is just an amazing actor in everything he's in. But tell us more. Where would we know him?
Mandalorian as Moff Gideon, but I'm sure Pete can give you a smorgasbord of every other show and movie he comes out in. I think the only other thing I've seen him in is The Boys. I know some of the shows he comes out in, but I don't like to speak on them since I haven't actually seen them.
Yeah, no, he plays an amazing, one of the top 10 television characters of all time. His name is Gus Fring, and he is from the Breaking Bad universe. Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. I've mentioned them before. near and dear to my heart. I was really disappointed that I didn't go, and more so, sir, I was disappointed that you didn't go. My wife actually asked me when I said today I gotta go because I gotta record with Rolling. She was like, "Was he back from San Antonio?" Like she already knows how like intricately involved in cons you are to not go and meet Ewan McGregor. That was very surprising.
Yeah, it just comes down to the career change thing. I'm not in a position to spend like I normally was before, which just, you know, it hurts right now, but it's going to set me up very well for the future to where like these expenses that I'm spending on cons, once I'm set, they're no longer like, you know, hits. It's like they're a bit more planned for anybody out there that doesn't know. I'm a financial planner now, so I got to have some perspective. I take a different perspective on it nowadays.
I get it.
Yeah, thanks. So Rupert Friend was actually in San Antonio also. So he split his time between Chicago and San Antonio, so which I thought was really awesome. And Spencer Wilding, who actually plays Darth Vader in Rogue One. Like we talked about David Prowse playing the movements. Well, this guy they hired to play him when he came back in Rogue One. So another thing I wanted to point out happening this week in Star Wars is we kind of had like a special type of anniversary. Sir Alec Guinness joined the Force August 5th, 2000. So that happened this week. I wanted to point it out since his contribution is just so large to the Star Wars universe. And I really like how we can kind of put it in context like that. Like he didn't pass away. He joined the Force.
Did you word it that way, or is that like a common? You know,
I may have
phrase?
Pulled that from somebody else on the internet. I can't take credit for that.
I like that. So he passed away in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And okay, he was already an old man in 1977. So he was almost 100 or something like that, or what?
I don't know. That's a good point. We need to look into that.
That's interesting. I didn't realize he had lived into the 90s. I guess that's very surprising to read that. But anyway, yes.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mr. Sir Alec Guinness.
Yes. So then we also have some birthdays, of course, like we always round out this segment with. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Simon Cassianitis. He plays Axe Woves on The Mandalorian Season 2. You guys might remember when Bo-Katan first shows up in Mando Season 2. She shows up with Sasha Banks, who we just mentioned, who plays Casca Reeves. That's her name. Well, this is actually the male Mandalorian that was with them, Axe Woves. So I just got to give a little story on that one. I remember when that episode dropped, we have our group chat with the wrestling group chat with the rest of the guys. And at that point, I was not waking up early to watch stuff. I was just going to work casually, and I was like, you know what? Get out of work. I'll watch it when I get out of work. And I remember you guys were talking about it, and I was like, okay, forget this. I already knew people were going to start coming out in that season from the cartoons, right? And I knew you guys were talking about that. I went to the bathroom at work, and I just sat on the throne and watched basically the entire episode.
Yeah, I remember that.
But if only you had been there, because my other buddy who was working with me at the time, who I now, have the shop with, I basically immediately ran out of the bathroom and into his office like a fat kid running out of a candy store. And I remember I was so excited to see Bo-Katan in live action.
Yeah.
I was just telling him what I just saw, right? But I was breathing heavily. I had to stop and breathe. It was legitimately like a fat kid out of a candy store. You could ask him about it. It was probably the funniest thing I'd ever done. I was just so hyped when I saw that episode. So I always have a special memory when I think of those three Mandalorians specifically about that. And then our other big birthday, this is a really big one for me, a really cool one. Corey Burton, who plays Cad Bane in all versions, animated, live action. Such an amazing character if you guys are not familiar with the animated series.
Absolutely.
And again, just to give a story on that, hair stood up when I saw him in the Bad Batch. He came back, but hair stood up even larger when I saw the hat in the distance. In that episode of the Book of Boba Fett. I basically just I could not believe that he showed up. I wanted him to show up so badly on that show. And when he appeared out of the distance, it was just one of the coolest things I'd ever seen.
Right. And I believe the name of the episode he shows up in is called something like A Stranger Emerges from the Desert or something like that.
Yeah.
It's such a badass title. And I was so excited because with social media these days, it's very hard to dodge the landmines of spoilers and whatnot. And I know that I usually don't get to them as early as most people do. They drop at 4 a.m. and I don't get to it till after work or whatever. So I dodged it all day. I had no idea. I knew the name of the title of the episode. I had no idea he was showing up, and when he did, dude, it was like, wow. And then they cast the exact same voice guy, which is what you need to do. I'm gonna take a stand right here. If the person is an alien of some sort, something that you know is going to end up being CGI in live action films, use the same voice person. It only makes sense. That's my 2 cents on that.
I can't argue that, man. I'm not going to add to that fire, but everybody out there knows how big of a fan I am of Ashley Eckstein as Ahsoka. Mm-hmm. I love Rosario Dawson. Please do not hate me for this. I just wish that live action Ahsoka was voiced by Ashley Eckstein, or just flat out played by her. She's just such an amazing person. She brings so much like personality to Ahsoka, and then when you meet this girl, it's just like she's like the coolest person you'll ever meet. She's the embodiment of who Ahsoka is. So I'm all about the keep the same voice, keep the same actor. Doesn't matter, just make it work. Like you know, Disney has money, make it work.
Exactly. So on that note, we were talking about Book of Boba Fett. I know this was not in the the outline for today, but we like to show off what our newest gets, if you will, as far as Star Wars go. I literally just got this, and I know you're not going to be able to see it, and this is a bad idea to do that, but anyway, I literally just picked it up. And what was so weird is I ordered this back in February, and it was pushed back like 2 or 3 months. And what's weirder. You already have yours, but I finally got my.
Oh, awesome!
Finally, it finally came in. I don't know why it took 4 months longer than it should have, but it is now here. This is the Black Series Book of Boba Fett. So this is him as an older gentleman with his new polished gear, and I really dug the first time I saw him with the new cleaned up armor and the repainted helmet and everything, and I'm finally can add that to my, with these type of things, you can either do one of 3 things, really. You can just avoid them altogether. You can buy them all, which is insane, but people do try to keep up. And number 3 is you can pick like a genre and build on it. So I went with Mandalorians. So I have him, Mandalorian / bounty hunter. So I have him. I have his father, Django. And I also have Cad Bane in the Black Series. So that's kind of what I was going with as far as my collection. So that's one to add to it.
You really got to show me up today by busting out a cool figure that I wasn't prepared to showcase anything. I got something coming in the mail. You watch.
I know better than to challenge you and those type of things.
It's cool. I had a really good week. I remember there was a particular day where it seemed like, I think it was like Tuesday or Wednesday, everything was just kind of falling into place. And I was talking to a friend of mine. Shout out to Josie, by the way. I was telling her how like all this stuff was happening, and one of those things that happened was like one of my Star Wars items. I got the notification it got shipped, and it's I'll just wait and show it. It's awesome. It's nothing crazy. Man. It's nothing crazy expensive, but it's Mandalorian related. Okay. I may have already mentioned the character. I'll give you that hint. Okay. But once it comes in, I'll show it off because I'm excited to see it.
Okay, I got it. All right, so moving on, we had mentioned last week we were going to talk about the Ilm documentary, and we both had homework. And I'm not pointing any fingers, but one of your dear hosts did not complete his homework, but that's okay. That's okay. He will later. So anyway, let me tell you this. It's a 6-part series. I watched 4 of them, and I started like at 9 p.m. So I didn't go to bed till almost 2 because I was so hyped. This show is awesome, and really do not drag your feet. Do not sleep on this one. It is an awesome series. It's better than I expected. So I have 2 more episodes, and I'm kind of like saving them. Like I don't want to burn through them, but I have a feeling once we're done recording today, that's exactly where I'm going right now is to finish it.
Oh yeah, I got a bit of a rundown from it this morning because I have breakfast with my dad on the weekends, and he proceeded to ask me, "Did you watch it?" And of course, I was reminded of the homework I didn't do. But shout out to my dad. I'm going to give a lot of shout outs today. Shout out to my dad because my dad is basically I like to think of him as the guy that gifted me the beauty of Star Wars. It's funny because on our Disney Plus accounts, in my household, it's my dad, myself, and my nephew. It's a bachelor pad for all intents and purposes. But every time I log on, I'm reminded of how big of a Star Wars fans we are. But it goes perfectly linear with like the age.
Right.
Because I remember I specifically set my dad's icon as Vader because he's the father, right? I set mine as Ahsoka, who is the apprentice. And I didn't choose this one. He did it on his own. But my nephew chose Baby Yoda, Grogu. So it just kind of lines up perfectly. Like that's the next coming of the Star Wars fanboy who's gonna grow up and basically outshine the two previous.
Yeah, no, my dad's icon is also Vader, which is ironic. That I guess maybe that's just a thing. Like that's something that dads do. But the patriarch of the family must be Vader on the Disney Plus icon. Mine is Maul, just FYI. Anyway.
Oh, and shout out, like I said, shout outs, a lot of shout outs today. Shout out to my nephew Malachi, who appreciates you and everything you do.
It's a great name.
He's the Baby Yoda on the icon.
is he a listener? Is he a regular listener?
Yes, he's a listener. I don't go and actively ask people if they're staying on top of my podcast, but yeah, I know they support us in every which way. So
awesome. Okay, so if we're done with that, Rolly, why don't you hit us with a synopsis of this week's episode?
All right, let's get into it. So this week, just a reminder, this episode is entitled The Lost Commanders. So in this episode, Ahsoka Tano sends the Ghost crew to Sealos in search of an old friend, one whose leadership and strategy skills could help the fledgling rebellion. But will this legendary commander be willing to join the fight?
Very intriguing synopsis, very short also, which leads me to my own just kind of a condensed synopsis is we need to find a better term than filler episode. Now, I'm not implying that this was a filler episode by any means, but it was definitely in that vein where there was like one real centralized point. It literally could have happened in like 10 minutes, but they expanded it to like add more action and whatnot. But everything that happened was a great episode, and it furthered the storyline, and we were introduced to old characters all over again. So it had everything that we're looking for. It just felt like what's a better term than a filler episode?
I don't know, man. I didn't really see this as a filler episode, but I know what you're talking about because when I did my outline, there's a certain segment of this episode where it's basically like I just proceeded to watch it for 7 or 8 minutes and didn't write anything. That was the filler portion, the adventure, little side quest part.
Right, I guess that's what I'm talking about.
But if you notice on my outline, I stretched out moments that were like seconds because they're just so big. Yes. So this is kind of one of those middle ones where it's like really big episode, like Pete's saying, but it is like in the midst of like a filler type of side quest episode.
So it's really just laying the groundwork for something bigger. So
yes, definitely.
Okay. So the episode was a fun episode. It starts with Commander Sato explaining to the rebels that the destruction of the command ship has severely limited their ability to fight the Empire in this sector. Ezra humorously suggests that they go and hide, like he did on Lothal when things got tough. Sato admires Ezra never being shy with his opinions, at which Ahsoka smirks, likely throwback to her snippy relationship with Anakin. And Sato suggests that the rebels establish a base. Hera argues that all the bases that they know of don't have the tactical advantage the rebels need to protect of what's left of the fleet, and she wishes that they had more allies. And I noted this. Ahsoka suggests that she knows a great military commander, but going back to Hera mentioning that they don't have enough support, there was a moment where Kanan jumps in and kind of like pokes at her about her being more military focused rather than what they're building there within their own little rebel unit. But I just noticed that was another little thing. Ahsoka suggests that she knows a great military commander with a vast knowledge of the Outer Rim who could help them find a base and also be a powerful ally, but she has not been able to locate him. She does, however, have one option she hasn't tried. So that's kind of what they laid out is they need help, they need extra reinforcements, and Ahsoka knows where to find them. So take it from there.
Yeah, so as Pete noted, Kanan is kind of being like a little turd this episode, but it kind of like it develops and you start understanding why he has his reasons. Yeah. We'll get into that. So basically, Ahsoka's last option that she hasn't tried is she has, for whatever reason or another, the dome, the head of one of the original tactical droids from the Clone Wars.
Right.
These tactical droids you don't see them in the films, but the fans out there that are familiar with the Clone Wars, they're basically the military strategists for the goofy, dumb battle droids. So as dumb as like those droids appear to be, they are led by superior droids. These are the tactical droids. They're just basically, they're playing chess, and they're brilliant military strategists, very similar to the clones. These droids do eventually outthink them. There's specific episodes where they highlight that, and I think there is a future Rebels episode where they highlight that also. So Ahsoka, again, like I said, the team boards the Ghost so that they can embark on this mission to locate Ahsoka's ally, and Ahsoka gives them the head of this old Clone Wars to basically plug it into the Ghost and go to the silo system, as she is suggesting, to locate her friend. So Ezra, of course, sees it, and he's basically like, well, how's that gonna help us? It's just a droid skull. It's very old. It's outdated. And Ahsoka basically reaffirms to him like how effective these droids were at calculating during the Clone Wars. So Ezra's kind of surprised because Ahsoka walks onto the Ghost, hands them the tactical droid, but then she leaves. And Ahsoka reaffirms to the team that she can't join them on the mission because she has her own mission to obtain further knowledge of Vader. Obviously, you remember our last episode where we spoke about it. There's a strong connection there. She knows who he is. She just has to prove it to herself and, find out for herself that her former master has truly become the person that he's become.
Right.
So what's funny is as she's leaving, she specifically tells Kanan twice over that he needs to trust her friend once the team locates him. So she knows that Kanan is going to have friction with this ally of hers, and she's reaffirming to him, hey, you need to trust me on this one. He's a good guy. The team heads to the silo system as Ahsoka directed them to, and as they pull out of hyperspace, the Ghost hyperdrive malfunctions. Hera proceeds to get angry with Chopper because she had set Chopper to do repairs on the Ghost, and apparently his repair priorities did not include number one, taking care of the hyperdrive. So they get into a spat. Of course, we can't go one episode without Chopper getting into a spat with anybody. So she tells Kanan, hey, take the Phantom and the rest of the team. Me and Chopper, we need to stay behind and work on the Ghost. So the team boards the Phantom, and Sabine quickly plugs in the tactical droid dome into it, at which point the droid gives them the coordinates for the ally. The team follows the coordinates, and they're led to a modified Republic tank at the annoyance of Kanan, who recognizes it as a clone military vehicle. This tank is basically those walkers that you see in the Clone Wars and Attack of the Clones. They're kind of like the early versions of the AT-ATs that the Empire uses. But these are the military vehicles that the clones use. So as soon as he recognizes it, he knows what's going on. It's like Ahsoka's ally is definitely probably a clone, a former clone general of some sort. So he quickly advises Ezra to be on guard because Kanan just has horrible, memories about clones because of Order 66.
Right,
he was part of it.
PTSD that we were talking about comes back.
Exactly. So they park the Phantom, they get out, and they approach the Republic tank, or the old Republic tank, excuse me. And as they're approaching it, these three older men exit the clone vehicle. And this part was super funny. I like literally laughed out loud when I saw it. Mind you, I've seen this a bunch of times. You just forget these little lines though. And as soon as they walk out, Zeb's like, it's just a bunch of old geezers. I had to pause. I was dying there for a second. I was like, man, the language is just perfect on there. So Ezra asked him if the number 7567 means anything to them, because that's the number that the tactical droid was spewing out as soon as he located this, or 7567 rather. At which point the lead clone recognizes that number as his birth number. So Kanan gets instantly defensive when it's basically confirmed that they are clones, and he proceeds to ignite his saber just to go on the defense because, again, of Order 66.
Right.
The clones also get defensive, and one of the clones begins to fire at him, but he's quickly ordered by the lead clone to stop, and he tells him they weren't the ones that betrayed us. 7567 proceeds to apologize and say they haven't seen a Jedi in a long while. And at the same time, Ezra also implores Kanan that they need to trust the advice that Ahsoka gave them.
Right.
So Ezra takes the lead, as we're starting to see, quite often as this show is progressing. He takes the lead and proceeds to introduce the Ghost Crew to the clones.
Right.
Clone 7567 introduces himself as none other than Captain Rex, who I was so excited to see come back in Rebels.
Yeah.
And then he proceeds to introduce his buddies, who are also former great commanders from the Clone Wars, Commander Wolf and Commander Gregor. So just to kind of give you a backdrop on these, I'm pretty sure all you Clone Wars fans know who Captain Rex is. He was the clone assigned to Anakin Skywalker, and also coincidentally, by extension, Ahsoka Tano. Commander Wolf is actually the clone commander that worked for Plo Koon. I did a little bit of research because I don't remember a lot of it's been a while since I've seen these episodes of the Clone Wars, specifically Attack of the Clones. I remember specifically Plo Koon got shot down, and Wolf's troopers basically were known as the Wolf Pack. Really cool name.
Yeah.
I think there's kind of still a little bit of gray area if he's the one that shot down Plo Koon or not, but from what I was reading, it kind of implies that he wasn't.
I don't think that Rex would have had him as part of his crew. I mean, those three he made it very clear that they did not follow the order, and they removed the inhibitor chip and whatnot. So I'm sure
and Gregor came out in one episode. I don't remember it exactly, but I know he suffered from amnesia or something, so that's why you can kind of tell he's got some screws loose. But if you guys happen to see the Bad Batch before Rebels, there is a couple, I think an episode or two where Gregor comes out, so they give you a bit more of background on him. So after the clones introduce themselves, Ezra tells Rex that they were sent by Ahsoka Tano, and I wrote some dialogue here because I want to speak on it a little bit. So Rex proceeds to say, Ahsoka Tano, I fought by her side from the Battle of Christophsis to the Siege of Mandalore, and a friend of hers is a friend of mine. So I want to pause here a little bit because anybody that watched these episodes on release, if you recall, season 7 of Clone Wars didn't come out till years later after Disney officially went back and finished it.
Right.
So the final arc of Clone Wars season 7 is called the Siege of Mandalore. So you can kind of tell that story was written. It was done. It's part of the Ahsoka book for the readers out there, but they specifically mention it in Rebels, even though you hadn't seen it on screen yet. So that was just a little tidbit I wanted to tell the fans about, because that's kind of like, that's storytelling. Like, we know we didn't finish Clone Wars, but we know this epic battle exists. So I thought it was a really cool drop for them to point out that battle there.
Now, real quick, since you segued into that, there was something you just reminded me, something I wanted to ask you about. So in the last episode of Rebels, Ahsoka basically and Anakin, like they force connect and they recognize each other, right?
Yes.
My question now is, Clone Wars, the series, happens before Rebels, right? In time wise. Okay. So that would mean that season 7, yes, it was produced after Rebels, but that storyline was all before. Doesn't she meet up with Vader in Clone Wars?
No.
No?
Go ahead. Let's finish your question.
She does not meet up with Vader in Clone Wars at all? Am I mistaken?
No, at the very end of Clone Wars, and spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Clone Wars, I'm sorry, but we have to start talking about everything as Rebels progresses. At the end, if you recall, she fakes her death along with Captain Rex. She buries the remaining clones, and she specifically leaves her sabers behind. So they kind of flash forward after that scene, and they show Vader go to the planet, and he picks up the saber, and he's kind of like, he ignites it, but you're kind of like trying to read body language in that scene. And the way I read it was like, he still thinks she's alive, but he's conflicted now because this arrangement that she left with the sabers there, it's telling him otherwise. Like, oh, she had to have crashed and died with the rest of these clones.
That's what I was thinking of. I was my bad. I was mistaken. I do remember a Vader moment in Clone Wars involving Ahsoka, but I guess in my mind it was twisted into some sort of a confrontation. But okay, moving forward.
All good. Yeah. So Rex welcomes the team on board the Republic tank. And it's funny because as soon as they enter, Ezra sees the clone helmets, and remember, Ezra collects any and all forms of helmets. That's just his thing, right? Yeah. So he's just enamored because the clone helmets, they're specifically armored differently than stormtroopers or anything else he's ever seen, and he knows that. You can tell. So I think the clones are kind of like, hey, be careful with that. And Ezra's like, oh, I'm sorry, I wouldn't want to move any dust that's on them. So Rex proceeds to ask him, how's Ahsoka doing? And Ezra says, well, she's actually in need of your help. We all are. We're trying to fight the Empire, but we're outnumbered, overmatched, and taking a beating. We could use your help. Captain Rex responds, I'm not sure I'm much help to anyone these days, recognizing his age, obviously. Didn't you hear? The Emperor said the clone army has outserved its purpose and retired us. Kanan, who's been basically upset about everything so far, interrupts and says, this was a wasted trip. You heard the clone. He's not interested. Ezra proceeds to argue with Rex that he could fight the Empire with the rebels, but Rex tells him his days as a soldier are over. Ezra asks if he can at least help the rebels find the base, as Ahsoka alluded to. Rex acknowledges he knows a few spots and asks the team to wait outside while he puts together a list of coordinates. So when the team exits, he kind of wants to have a little meeting with Wolf and Gregor. Mm-hmm. Wolf confesses to him that he doesn't want to help the rebels because it's going to put the clones at risk with the Empire if they find out they're helping the Jedi. So Gregor, who kind of, again, like I said, he's got screws loose. He's the comedic one of the group. He tries to calm him down and tell him that they have the situation under control. And he's like, besides, I'm going to go outside and hunt a Jupa. So at that point, I don't know what a Jupa is, but we'll get to it. So Gregor steps outside and he asks the rebels if they can help the clones in return for the list of coordinates that they're going to provide for them. And he tells them of the Jupa who roam the desert, who are large enough to feed the team for an entire year if they can manage to slay one. Ezra says they'll help and asks what they need, and Gregor specifically points at Zeb and says, we need him. So that scene kind of cuts. Now we get a little bit more serious. It cuts to a scene where we're back on one of the Star Destroyers where Agent Kallus is. And it shows an Imperial officer informing Kallus of a distress signal that was just received from a decommissioned clone about an encounter with the Jedi. One of the other officers that is there suggests that, hey, we've received these false signals before. Like, what's going to be any different now? Right. But Agent Kallus reaffirms to him that all leads must be pursued. So he sends out a probe to go investigate.
Is there any more hated asshole droid than a probe droid? I mean, God, I hate seeing them all the time.
Yeah, they're just like cockroaches for all intents and purposes. Like, they're not going to do anything but annoy the crap out of you, and as soon as they're just vulnerable to being stepped on, and that's the end of it. So the probe droid is basically, you take one shot at it and it explodes, but the damage was already done, right? You're pestered, you're annoyed, and in the case of the rebels, they oust them.
And they tell on them or whatever. They're like the hall monitors of the galaxy, whatever.
Yeah. So we cut back to a scene where Kanan is hanging out on the Phantom on his own, and you can kind of tell he's frustrated. He's got a lot on his mind, and he's tinkering with his saber. So Ezra, who's always trying to play the good guy, balance everything between his master and anybody on the team, he approaches him to talk about his hesitation with Rex and the clones. Kanan tells him he doesn't understand that the clones are dangerous, and Ezra proceeds to tell him, well, Ahsoka said to trust him, and you trust her, don't you? And Kanan tells him, you weren't there. You weren't even born. It was at the end of the war. Our fellow soldiers, the clones, the ones who we Jedi fought side by side with, suddenly turned and betrayed us. I watched them kill my master. She fought beside them for many years, and they gunned her down in a second, and then came for me. Later, they said they had chips in their heads that made them do it. Said they had no choice. And as he's saying this, Rex steps onto the Phantom after he just heard everything. And Rex proceeds to tell him, I didn't betray my Jedi. Wolf, Gregor, and I all removed our control chips. We all have a choice. So I want to stop here too, because, I know there's a lot of fans out there who are watching it. They're seeing the stories in order now, not in release order. I want to touch on this because for the viewers and listeners that have seen the Bad Batch, season 7 of Clone Wars for starters, you saw that Ahsoka actually helps Rex remove his inhibitor chip. But I don't see it as a retcon, because I thought Dave Filoni did an incredible job of kind of breaking that down. Because if you remember correctly in Clone Wars, Rex resisted Order 66. Like he pulled up his pistols to Ahsoka, and told the other clones, stay back, I'll do it myself. But he didn't want to pull the trigger. And I remember having this conversation with a friend, because this isn't something that's explained in the show. Call this a fan take for all intents and purposes. But I was telling him, we were comparing how easily Commander Cody shot down Obi-Wan Kenobi versus how Rex resisted shooting Ahsoka. And I was telling him that I think that the bond, the uncharacteristic way of being a Jedi that Anakin and Ahsoka were, rubbed off so strongly on Rex that he became a unique version of a clone, and he was actually able to resist. Obi-Wan was more about conventional Jedi Order ways, and Cody was basically the same way. Cody was a clone trooper, and because he had Obi-Wan as his general, they never deviated from the plan. I really thought that was a real good explanation as to why Rex was able to resist and Cody wasn't. Like, I know Obi-Wan always spoke so highly of Cody, but come on. Like, Rex reported to Ahsoka and Anakin. They're basically the Bash brothers, the bad boys of the Jedi Order. They were doing everything the way they wanted to, and I just really thought that's why Rex resisted the way he did in Clone Wars. That's how it was for me. I don't know what your opinion is on that, Pete.
No, I mean, I agree. I agree with everything you're saying. That makes the most sense.
Okay, cool. Glad to hear somebody. I don't have many fan takes, but that's kind of like my opinion on that. So again, the Rebels did come out before season 7 of Clone Wars, so they had to go back and clean this statement up a little bit, where again Rex says, Wolf, Gregor, and I all removed our control chips. We all have a choice. Ahsoka assisted him, but he did resist. So getting back to Rebels, so the scene cuts to Zeb. This is kind of the scene where we now kind of get like the little side quest adventure portion. The scene cuts to Zeb leading the tank. They kind of have him tied with an energy harness, like a fishing line for all intents and purposes, to hunt the Jupa. And Gregor is thankful to Ezra for lending Zeb to help them. Ezra says, yeah, I mean, Zeb packs a punch and he's a great hunter. And Gregor explains that they actually needed Zeb because this Jupa loves Lasat. And immediately, the team realizes what's going on, and Sabine's like, wait a minute, Zeb's not the hunter, he's the bait. So the team tells Zeb to run, but he's immediately taken underground by the Jupa along with the energy line. And just to kind of, again, I didn't do research on the Jupa or anything, but it reminded me, I'm not comparing it to a crate dragon. Please do not mistake me, any of you hardcore fans out there who probably know more about the Jupa than I do. But they kind of travel the same way. Like, the crate dragons are underneath the sand in Tatooine, and they come up, they get their prey, and then they go back down. This was the same thing. I don't know what kind of creature this was, but it was a large creature that the clones are trying to kill because they wanted to harvest the meat. Right. So they were using Zeb as bait to catch one, because apparently the Jupa are really big fans of Lasat. So the team is able to execute the clone plan to take down the Jupa, but at the extreme anger of Kanan, as he exclaims that they almost got my friend eaten. Gregor thanks Zeb for helping him take down the biggest Jupa yet, at which point Zeb gets real, I put chiflao. I can't think of the word in English. So I'm just going to roll with that. Zeb gets real chiflao and tells Kanan, oh, you know what? It wasn't so bad. If you're telling me I took down a great beast, even if I was the bait.
Right.
Okay, suddenly I'm a badass. So as all this is happening, they show the Imperial probe droid that was deployed by Kallus, and he's viewing the entire plan that's going down, and he reports the information back to Kallus. So now we have another scene cut to Kanan, and he's talking to Hera aboard the Phantom on a communicator. And Hera is excited at the thought of the clones helping them, but Kanan tells her not to get her hopes up, as it seems Rex is not going to come back with them. And Hera tells him, and you don't want him to, do you? I understand your fears, but I also remember when the Jedi and clones fought side by side. They saved billions of lives, including my own. And I took a note here that said that this was a throwback to the Bad Batch, because if you remember, Hera and Chopper come out on the Bad Batch. Clone Troop 99 helps her, which is the formal name for the Bad Batch. I don't remember the specific episode if they specifically helped save their lives. I'm sure that there was I'm sure here she's referring to the clone armies themselves helping, her family in general, because we do see that in the Clone Wars.
Right.
But I also thought it was a really cool tie-in to Bad Batch, because these obscure clones actually do help her in that series also. So Rex informs Ezra that he's assembled a list of potential bases and clearance codes and a few protocols that the Imperials still use. And then he kind of has a really cool conversation that I highlighted between him and Ezra, and Rex tells him, "You were brave today, kid. You jumped right in there to help. A great Jedi once told me that the best leaders lead by example. You do that well." And of course, he's speaking of Anakin Skywalker, which was really cool. And Ezra tells him, "Thanks. I've learned from a great Jedi too, Kanan." And Rex tells him, "I don't think he likes me or ever will. Can't say I blame him. The war left its scars on all of us." And Ezra implores him, "Won't you please reconsider joining us?" And Rex says, "You know, I've outserved my purpose for that kind of fighting. I'm afraid. After the war, I questioned the point of the whole thing. All those men died, and for what?" And Ezra tells him, "I guess what they thought was right." And they kind of show Kanan listening in, and he's sighing because he's reflecting, because clearly Ezra is seeing the bigger picture. He's being the bigger man, and Kanan is being kind of like, I don't want to say childish, because he is suffering from PTSD here for all intents and purposes, but I think there's a bit of like jealousy on his part, because Ezra is being the better man here. He's trusting these people, and Kanan knows he needs to fix that. Like, he, as Ezra told him, Ahsoka trusts him. Like, you need to trust him too. And Ahsoka, in Kanan's eyes, is, you know, the Jedi to look up to, because she was part of his like group from back in the Clone Wars.
Right.
So Sabine discovers this distress call to the Empire while downloading the base coordinates that Rex provided her, and she proceeds to step outside of the Republic tank, and she confronts the clones about it, and also says that there's messages Ahsoka sent to Rex that he never answered. And Rex states that he never saw any messages from Commander Tano, and immediately confronts Wolf about what he was doing. And Wolf tells him, "I contacted the Empire. If they found out that we were helping Jedi, they'd wipe us out. I wanted to protect you guys, protect our squad." And Rex tells him, "The war's over. We are free men. We can't live under the fear of the Empire for the rest of our lives, Wolf. That's not freedom." So Wolf immediately, you know, acknowledges it, and he apologizes for all the mistakes that he's making up until this point. And at that same time, Sabine discovers that the Imperial probe droid is aboard the Phantom, destroying the ship, just sabotaging it so they can't get away. So the probe flees into the desert, and Kanan is attempting to gun it down with no luck. I guess a Jedi's skill with a blaster is just not the same as a lightsaber. I kind of thought that was funny. And Rex proceeds to assist him and guns down the droid himself, not at the satisfaction of Kanan. So Kanan is still kind of like jealous, upset that these clones are helping. He doesn't want to have anything to do with them. So the team approaches the down droid, with Sabine informing the team that the Phantom engine took a hit and it will take her a while to repair it. However, because of the probe droid, the Empire is now on its way. And then, unfortunately, the show goes black with a "to be continued" message.
I completely forgot this was a two-parter or a cliffhanger episode.
Yeah,
So-
me too, because I remember how it ends, and I remember looking at the timer, I'm like, I don't think what's going on here. I don't think that can happen in like 3 minutes or whatever. So I was like, oh, I've got to wait till next week to talk about one of my favorite scenes.
Right. So that concludes the episode recap, and I still, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking like, what am I trying to convey as far as this episode, the way it was laid out. It was a good episode. It was a great episode actually, because we were introduced to an old character that was a huge part of the Clone Wars. But that side mission where they were fishing, basically, and it was like the scene from Jaws is what I was thinking of. Is like, you know, they were trying to catch this big thing, and you know, there was some comedic elements that kept it flowing. It's not to say that I didn't enjoy that part, but like, if you take that 5-minute segment out of it, you see what I'm saying. Like, this could have been a 10-minute episode easily. But everything that happened for a reason, and it was a cliffhanger episode. So now we find that our rebels are stuck without a way off that rock, and the Empire is on the way. So a lot of good, fun, intriguing stuff leading into next week's episode, which is called Season 2, Episode 4, Relics of the Old Republic. So what do you suppose that's about, Rolly?
Well, if this wasn't a to be continued, I'd probably veer off in the totally wrong direction. But it definitely is implying, the clones themselves. They're another thing of what's left of what used to be before the Clone Wars and Order 66 just completely annihilated the old ways and the Empire regime took over.
Right. I think so too. So, if nothing else, that brings us to the close of Good Morning Lothal, the unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. Any closing thoughts or anything that you're looking forward to for next week? Besides this episode, what's going on with you next week?
Well, all I'm thinking is Rebels. So I thought of something I wanted to say, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I'm reminded of why season 2, I used to think season 2 was my favorite. It's just like you can tell episode after episode, it's just been great. But again, because this is the third time I'm seeing Rebels, season 3 and 4 get greater than this. So if you're just having a blast with season 2 at this point, that's how great this show is. So, I'm excited to keep going through this.
Okay. So I want to invite everybody, if anyone has any questions, comments, or suggestions, please let us know. Please write in and get the conversation going. Anything that you might be looking forward to for the rest of the season. How are you enjoying it so far? We want to hear from you guys, so please drop us a line. And if nothing else, Rolly, then I guess there's nothing left to say except thank you for watching this week's episode of Good Morning Lothal, the unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I'm Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora,
saying, may the Force be with you always. Goodbye from Lothal.